Good morning, everyone. I'm Jade. I'm from Decentralab. We are a venture builder in Da Nang City. And we are having the flagship product named Coping.io, a data platform and signal for perpetual trading. Today, it's my honor to be here to moderate this panel with all the leaders building the foundation, and we share about bringing the world on-chain tokenization strategy from the chain builder. So first of all, I would like to introduce Janesh from Pharos network. Next one is Trang from D3, and the last one is Wilson from Mantle. Now, please introduce about yourself, your team, and what you are building briefly for all the audience today. Maybe we starting with Wilson first.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Wilson, and I manage strategy and operations at Mantle. We actually have a huge Vietnamese community that's involved in Mantle, so thanks for all the support there. You might know us as an Ethereum L2, but over the recent years, we've been making a push to really becoming the blockchain for finance. I'd love to share my thoughts with everyone today.
So maybe Trang, you have some sharing about what you're doing.
Sure. Hey everyone, good morning. Xin chào. Mark Trang from D3, Chief Marketing Officer. Our mission is to make domains great again. We do this by bringing the entire internet on-chain through a protocol called DOMA. We're a small company, but we're backed by some great teams and great partners, including Paradigm, Coinbase, Namecheap. And then we're actually here today as the sponsors, so we're excited to meet a lot of the builders. We've got a grant program and looking forward to building with a lot of the developers here at Conviction.
Thank you, Mark. Janesh?
Hi everyone, I'm Janesh. I'm the head of DevRel at Pharos Network. We are building a layer 1 blockchain, and I know everyone will be like, yeah, yet another blockchain, but it's pretty much different. Like, we are building for the real world right now. We are building with enterprises and institutions. We are building with builders, and we are building for real world applications. So all the operations that can be bring on-chain is going to be with us because we provide the real world infra that is needed for that. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a different panelists from different chain, and they are building really different things. So come to the first question for the panelists today. When we ask bringing the on-chain tokenization, we have a really different answer. So how you define bringing the world on-chain on what you are doing? Maybe we starting with Janesh.
Sure. So as you all know that we always talk, when we talk about real world assets and tokenization, it's always about the real estate, assets, nothing more than that. But when we need to see that where's the real economy lies, it lies in the institutional grade activities, it lies in the enterprise level operations. When we see the FMCG market and even other enterprises like e-commerce and a lot of other sectors like telecom industry and everyone, they are one of the ones who are thriving right now, and that's where the real economy lies. Because if you talk about assets, it's a real world asset that's going to come on chain and become a deadweight on a chain. But there should be a way to tokenize it or increase its utility, because once it's on chain, it becomes a DeFi protocol or a DeFi assets like an ERC20 or an SPL20, and it's nothing more than that. So it should always be how you can increase the utility of that asset on chain. And similarly, how you can bring the off-chain operations on chain. That's where the real economy comes into the picture. I would like to pass on to all my panelists to share their thoughts on that.
Sure, I'll add on to that. I think beyond I think all of us can agree that there's the technical aspect, right, of bringing assets on chain. I think at D3, when we think about bringing the world on chain, it means bringing users as well, right? So depending on which statistics you look at, there's probably 500 million wallets out there, right? Active or not. But there's 10x, 12x more humans out there, right? That aren't in crypto, aren't on chain today. And I think it's our job to find ways to on-ramp those users. Bringing the world on-chain isn't just about the atomic assets. It's about users, populations, communities. And then that implies democratizing a certain level of access, right? You have to give them a reason to come on-chain. For us, it's about democratizing assets to digital real estate, right? Internet domains. But it could be financial assets, it could be luxury goods, the actual physical real estate. And it's kind of our job to find ways build those bridges and on-ramps so that the users that aren't currently crypto active, right, have a reason to come online as well, come on chain.
Yeah, just to chime in on that, I think fellow panelists hit the nail on the head, right? When we talk about bringing the world on chain, first of all, this is a $1 million question because there's so many assets in the real world that you can bring on chain. Some might have more product market fit than others, but I think that's why this panel is useful today because we're talking about bringing different type of ecosystems on chain. So just to touch briefly on the financial side of things, finance is something that everyone uses in their daily lives to many different extents. And I think the gist of bringing this on chain is to bring the traditional world onto Web3 rails and of course, as Web3 natives, we also benefit from the TradFi capital and liquidity, which is in the dozens of trillions, right? If you think about Wall Street. So I think in the end of the day, we just want to converge these two worlds who have been quite, distant over the past decade and try to make the financial world more efficient through blockchain.
So gather all the answer here, we see that they try to bridge between the Web2 space and Web3 space by many different ways. Especially for D3, they consider that it's important when bringing the on-ramping user to the Web3 space, and then we have an opportunity to do more things. So next, aside from what you are personally building, which are the project or the thing you see that tokenization in 2025 really visionable, you see that it's really interesting for you? Don't mention your project. Okay, so maybe Janesh?
Sure, definitely. So what I'm more interested is about bringing the legal documents on chain. It's not a financial asset, but it's a very important factor of every human being out there. All the properties that they own, all the policies that they own, all the activities that they do, it's all legal and it's just a sheet of paper. If my mother wants to transfer something to me, she has to go to an office, a government office, wait for days for her appointment and everything. So it's a very cumbersome process, which should be an easier process. And this cannot be done with a JPEG or a PNG. It should be done with an NFT. And that's what I believe that should come on chain. So to make the life easier. So after they pass on the things to me, it should be much more easier for me to manage rather than looking out for papers everywhere and trying to understand what's this and that. So that's what I'm more interested about, and I would like to ask all my fellow panelists to share their thoughts on other parts.
Very interesting. Yeah, so how about you, Wilson?
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, again, so many stuff in the real world that could thrive on chain, but one area where I'm personally interested in is the whole creator economy. And this just so happened to be in the news recently. You see all those launch pads for creator tokens. And I think this just displays to the general trend of this generation, Gen Z, if you will. My little brother, he's 13 years old. His dream is to be like a YouTuber, right? Like Mr. Beast, whatever. And I think this creator economy is interesting because it allows millions, billions of creators throughout the world to be able to have ownership over their content, as well as be able to monetize their content. So I think I'm really interested in and passionate about this field myself. And I hope, the content creator economy can really thrive using blockchain completely permissionlessly.
And Mark?
Yeah, I think, there's two examples. One is, let's start with the personal one. And I don't think there's a ton of liquidity or necessarily financial incentive. But blockchains fundamentally are a great provenance and attestation platform, right? So for assets and everyday things that you actually want an audit trail for, whether it's food, high-end supply chains, things that you're afraid of counterfeiting, those are all great. I think asset classes is a weird word for it. They're probably commodity classes that could be modernized. I do think the mix of assets on chain tied with stables is going to be something we see a lot of, right? Particularly at the sovereign, right? Dubai is doing this. I think they're working with friends at Ripple to actually tokenize Dubai's real estate, but tie it as a asset-backed stable, right? So you're not actually trading any of the actual real estate there, but the fundamental value of the stable is tied to that as a proxy. So that's an interesting derivative, right? That's now possible. That probably would have been impossible or really hard to do from a TradFi perspective.
Yeah, so like we have the interesting idea from legal document to like the creator, activity creator economy, and also commodity, real estate. But then how to unlock the liquidity? Like because we bring that's are all non-financial assets. We bring it on chain. So how we unlock the liquidity related to this to motivate more people to have like, because wherever they are financing, they care, right? Yeah. So, Mark, you have any idea on this?
Sure. I think, well, just be the problem with a lot of us in blockchain tech is that we assume tokenization is enough. And I think tokenization may be step one of like 150. Right, it's the table stakes. It allows you kind of fair access to the data, but that doesn't guarantee liquidity, right? It doesn't mean the bid-ask, the buy-sell side of a trade actually comes online and participates as well. And I think there's a lot more infrastructure, partnerships, and even human aspects, right, of those relationships that have to come on chain as well. Tokenization isn't enough. I think we've blindly assumed that a lot of the early cycle tokenization of certain NFT assets, for example, would translate to more advanced markets like TradFi assets or even digital first assets like domains, right? So you actually have to bring a lot of that infrastructure as well. And that's the hard work, right? Just because you mint something doesn't mean there's actually inherent value or a liquid market already that comes online with it.
Like, but the point here, like, we know that tokenization is the very first, tokenize something, very first step. But then, like, what next? Right? Yeah. So, also, Wilson, you have any input?
Yeah. Those are fair points raised. And I think the tech is important. The tokenization is important. If you guys were here for the previous panels, there was one on equitization. I think the issue with this RWA is not the tokenization itself, but how do you get, this wave of sustainable liquidity, right? We know like past few cycles, airdrops were a huge thing, and airdrops in short is just a way to incentivize an ecosystem, right? But as you've seen in the past few years, it may not be enough to get users to stick around. You just get a bunch of like Cybo farmers to come drain your ecosystem and just leave, right? And I don't have the answer personally, but I think incentives are important as well as creating a flywheel. One real world example we see of a flywheel, for better or for worse, are DATs, right? Digital asset treasuries. You might say it's a sort of leverage play. It's unsustainable, but it is one way to creatively bridge TradFi capital with Web3, right? And, once TradFi capital gets on chain, it could spill over into other ecosystems. So I think this is a good start. But in the context of, let's say, the creator economy, there has to be some sort of flywheel, right? Whether it's Mr. Beast or some other influencer who has a huge following, they'll bring this organic traffic onto their platform, and it'll spread like wildfire. So I think that's my take on how to get liquidity. It comes down to the right incentives.
Okay, and Janesh?
Well, as you all know that the TradFi market is so-called a boring market for the newer generations that are coming up. And to bring the liquidity, we need to make it much more interesting. And as we all know that history repeats itself, and I'm sure like many of the people will be there in the DeFi summer. I believe that we can see an RWFI summer when we start treating these boring illiquid assets, and when we tokenize it, we start treating them as a RWFI and make it more lucrative for people to bring the liquidity in terms of yield strategies, LP farming and everything. So when we drive all these strategies, all these mechanisms that we used to do during the DeFi summer with all the crypto assets, which didn't had any value in the real world, but they only had like a electronic value, like a 1 and 0, and they flourished a lot. Similarly, with the assets that actually have a real world value and they have sustainable growth and everything, then I believe that in this case, if we imply the same things, we can repeat the history and we can make it much more lucrative with bringing a much higher liquidity in terms of growing the RWFI ecosystem. We see right now like the current overall market of crypto is around 3.5 trillion. We are expected to reach around 7 trillion by this whole cycle. But when we see about the tokenized assets, it's more than 16 trillion right now. And we are just talking about the assets, not the operations or the activities. So we see how bigger the overall pie chart is, and it's more than 2 times for the whole space. So if we make it much more interesting for the newer generation, make it cool, I think we can bring the liquidity in the picture right now.
Okay, so like follow up one with this question. Like we know that Solana Foundation, like the Solana ecosystem or Ethereum ecosystem, it's very big, right? Like there are deep liquidity there. So it's like very natural process. Project come to them to have a like that a project like have a tokenized. How you convince the new project or like the very interesting project to come to you, like with like Pharos, with like a Mantle, to come with you, go with you to make it a bigger tokenized project. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically when we talk about like why not Ethereum, Solana can get all the traction in the market, like they are one of the oldest ones right now. But I believe that's not going to be the case, because when we talk about real world assets, real world applications, it should be the real world interface or real world experience. Right now, most of the infra of the world that is being operated is either being built on their own bare metal servers distributed across the world, or built on AWS or Google Cloud. But if we want to bring the same experience to users, Ethereum cannot deliver that. Solana, we know like how much downtime and how many times it has faced a downtime in the space. And if we ask the finality rates, it's very high. So if we want to bring the users, we need to provide the real world interface, and blockchain should be the underlying technology, not like a forefront, putting that technology on your face. Like you should be easy to use it on your phone with your Google Chrome browser, because that's the most popular one, or in iPhones, it's Safari, and you can easily use it. But right now the situation is, if you want to use a Web3 application or a dApp, you need to specifically open a MetaMask wallet, go to the browser and then access it. That makes the whole process cumbersome and puts the blockchain technology on your face like, hey, you are using it, you should know about it. But actually I don't want to use it on my face. I should be like a OAuth engine where I just sign up, start using the assets, try to interact with the things. And that's what I believe we are trying to do. But not just providing a real world interface, but the real world infra with less than 1 second finality, 50k TPS, which is highest amongst all the other competitors right now, like Monad and Mega ETH, and 2 gigagas per second throughput, which makes it much more efficient for people to build on it. And that's what we are trying to build with enterprises and other institutional partners to bring their operations on chain, which they felt not possible on Ethereum and Solana. And that's where the economy lies.
Yeah, Mantle, how about you? Your team, what?
Yeah, I totally agree with Janesh's point, because here at Mantle, of course, we're Ethereum aligned. We started out as an L2 on Ethereum. And of course, Ethereum is the ultimate settlement layer. We rely on it for security. The entire on-chain finance will rely on it for security. But I think why people want to come to us, or why institutions would trust any ecosystem in the first place, it comes down to trust and stickiness of the ecosystem, right? If you think about it in Web2 terms, why is Apple so successful? You get an iPhone, you get a Mac, you have the App Store. Everyone's within this closed economy, right? So you get the user to stay on it for years and years. And every year, of course, Apple just pumps out another product, right? The user base is still there. So I think to translate this to what Mantle's doing, we have the L2, we have our own liquid staking protocol. In short, we have the infrastructure and liquidity in place. What we're doing now is trying to build the app store of blockchain. So actually, we have this crypto neobank. It's called UR Bank that we're going to launch in Q3. Completely, blockchain-based banking, revolutionizing tokenized deposits and allowing users really to go through the entire Mantle journey, right? They can come into this neobank, deposit their stable coins and fiat, unify these two, and then play around in the DeFi ecosystem. So I think, and of course, if you've paid attention to the news, we also sort of merged with Bybit. So we're getting their backing as well, and I think it just unlocks a whole new wave of liquidity and user onboarding potential. And I think as an institution, whether it's Web2 or Web3, they want to see this type of backing. They don't want to see us as a standalone, chain or tech. They want to see us as an ecosystem that they can participate in. So I think that's where the trust comes. But of course, we're max bullish Ethereum. So good to head.
Yes, thank you. It's very thoughtful and to grow your business, or if they support you on the way doing. So maybe with Mark?
I think, you're probably asking about just regulatory backdrop, right? And how does that affect kind of our chain strategies? I think at D3, we're a EVML2, but we bridge to all other chains, right? We're a Solana Foundation partner. We partner with Base, Avalanche, Viction, Sui, etc. The unique kind of impact of regulation is how the internet is regulated, right? How are domain names regulated? And it's not at a country level. It's actually at an international level, governed by a group called ICANN, right? They're the ones that determine the DNS and issue TLDs, manage .coms, .xyzs, etc. And our chain specifically addresses the regulatory requirements of that. And more importantly, abstracts away that at the chain level, so that when we work with a Web2 registrar like a GoDaddy or with a Web3 project, everyone's kind of certain and has a certain level of minimum trust that domain ownership and transfers are maintained, right? The fundamental kind of rules of the DNS are built into the chain. I think it's unique because our team comes from that space. I think chains that are doing domain or vertical industry specific applications have to have that pedigree, right? It has to come with that level of experience, and then that gets implemented into the technology. I would say you're almost tokenizing a business process. You're not just tokenizing the asset. And then from there, users, government organizations, partners, and other ecosystems will trust you, right? And then that creates a certain level of what I call on-chain gravity, right? People start to get that flywheel that you mentioned, start trusting the chain, and then that starts creating this flywheel of adoption. And then you have to prove it, right, in how the trust plays out in your ecosystem.
Yeah, but then how it shaped your strategy? Yeah. Okay. So how about Mantle?
Yeah, I think we can't escape regulation. I think at a certain point, because crypto was born on, this whole ethos of decentralization, but I think in 2025, just based on narratives, based on pragmatism, I think what matters going forward is more of a, centralized DeFi type of framework, if you will. I think Ethereum itself, it's definitely a decentralized network, but there's a lot of permission and permissionless apps that are being built on this layer itself, right? And I think as the world begins to adopt and embrace crypto, there's going to be so many bespoke use cases that require a different type of setup for the institution. So just for instance, at Mantle, back to this neobank that I was talking about, we actually acquired a Swiss FINMA-backed bank to provide us with the regulatory rails we need to build this product. So, we're still trying to keep this Web3 blockchain, but we need to make sure we can run this product in different areas of the world, and you have to just cooperate locally and play ball. And I think, at least in finance, which is traditionally been a very regulated industry, this is a good way to get them to embrace blockchain, but we cannot go from 0 to 100 overnight.
Thank you. And how about, Pharos?
Yeah, so we know that regulations are inevitable. They used to exist in the traditional business, traditional finance as well. So you cannot escape it. And we have a saying that if you want yourself to be heard, you need to listen first. For a very long years, we have been repelling the government and the regulations that no, we don't want to do it. We want to do it in our style, in our approach, all decentralized, everything. But we need to be compiled. If we want to get into the system where we want to bring legal documents or bring the TradFi assets, we call it TradFi. So that means they were regulated, and that's why they call it traditional finance. They are not decentralized finance and everything. So that's why we need to comply with them and do all the things in their way. But we need to keep on putting our own thoughts and ideas to mix and match with the industry, with the new advancements, as well as align with the government and the stakeholders and the policy makers to make everything aligned, whether it's DeFi or CeFi, and complete the whole circles and bring it to a middle ground. That's what I think that will be the best way to do the approach.
Yeah, so it's like forcing what necessary for specific use case, or also combines K by K to align between different sector for different projects. So come to the last question of the panel today. What do you think about real-world asset space will actually look like over the next few years? And what are the key factors you believe will define or dominate the next phase of this market? Like for the factor, you are allowed only use some keyword. Yeah, so for you first?
The only keyword that I would love to talk about is real-world applications. That's more than real-world assets. Because as I've been talking all through my session and all this panel discussion, that we need to bring real-world operations on chain, and how we can do it, how we can enable that by performing the real-world performance. And that's what we went back to our drawing boards when we were building the Pharos network. We designed everything from scratch, whether it's our storage layer, which is 15.6 times much more efficient than Ethereum's. We build our own EVM or virtual machine, which is a deterministic virtual machine. And we work towards the approach of parallelization to improve the overall performance. And that's how we did it. And yeah, so that's what I think is going to be the next phase in the crypto cycle, bringing the real world applications on chain. Because when we talk to a lot of FMCG partners and a lot of other industrial and enterprises, they say that we are bleeding money every year, around in billions and trillions, and we want to stop it. And I think the operations can be much more streamlined with blockchain. And I believe with our performance layer 1 blockchain, that's really possible.
Okay, so how about you, Mark? You see the vision there?
Yeah, I think, well, let's choose the key phrase. I'm going to call it real world ramps, meaning if we're going to on-ramp the next 5 billion users, the ramp has to be better than what they already have, right? So blockchain and Web3 and tokenizing by itself isn't good enough, right? So it's got to modernize something. It's got to bring the same level of trust. It's got to bring the liquidity partners, the trading partners. But that's the only way I think we're going to grow in terms of what we're doing here, right, in crypto and Web3, is to make sure that those real world ramps are very compelling, right? And that could be at the performance level. It could be at the policy level. It literally could be at the UX level, right? What we were willing to put up with, over the last 5 years is not what the next generation of 1 billion users is going to be able to put up with, right? So we're going to have to make it very easy for them in order for us to grow.
Okay, thank you. And you?
Yeah, absolutely spot on, Janesh, Mark. My vision is basically real world synergy, right? Essentially, there's a lot of stuff in the real world that doesn't really have a fit with Web3 blockchain. And I think there's no need to really force it into blockchain. But in short, for the real world applications that will find product market fit, they have to solve an issue, right? Whether it's cost cutting, efficiency, or providing democratizing access to assets, right? So for instance, banking, democratizing banking, access to microfinancing, SME loans. You know, if you think about the US or these developed countries, they have robust banking systems, but then you also have, developing countries that have a huge underserved population, right? You have farmers that need financing who don't have a clear credit history, and the list goes on. I think the technology for tokenization, we're more or less there. Now the question is, how do we unlock this liquidity? How do we get this flywheel going? So number one, users in the world, they'll be using blockchain without really thinking about it, right? They're going to make if you're a business, you're going to make a cross-border payment. It's just going to be settled near instantly, right? You're not even going to know Heather, Circle, whatever, right? I think that's really the next step, abstraction of this crypto technology. Because if you think about it, everyone here uses the internet, but not everyone knows the nooks and crannies. So I envision the same thing about blockchain. It's just a tool to get us into a more efficient and democratized world. So super excited for what's ahead.
Okay, thank you, the panelists today. So after the panel, we see that tokenization, bringing the word on-chain for tokenization is only the first step. We have to build many different things from trust, from operation level, liquidity, or many different level with even policy. For all of us here do believe the next phase of real world access by tokenization, and it will be natural as we using it at internet right now. Okay, thank you all the panelists today, and thank you all the audience. Looking for if you're looking for learning more things about D3, about Pharos or Mantle, come and meet them. Thank you.